Hello, everybody out there in YouTube. This is Reverend here, and we are back with one of my few videos in my playlist, which is Gaming Rants and News with Reverend. I'm actually making this addendum video to go out of my way and to clarify a few things regarding the Atari Box and the C64 Mini. Basically, the retro consoles that we had covered in the last few videos, the last couple of videos that I put up. Within the video that we had for the Atari Box, the follow-up video, there are some questions that were brought up that I really didn't have answers for at the time. There are reasons, there are things, and there are facts that bugged me about the Atari Box. And there are certain points about it that really kind of bothered me. I didn't exactly have the words to go ahead and put them together and say within the video when we had Gray Mouse and the theme also speaking in it, and also, you know, during the nature of the conversation, sometimes it just doesn't go ahead and sometimes you just don't cover some of the things that you want to go ahead and cover, especially when you want to go ahead and make sure that when you're having a conversation with other people involved, you want them to go ahead and contribute also. It's also one of the reasons why it's a lot easier for, as a side note, honestly, to go ahead and make videos when I'm just talking with those guys about random things and all of that. But, you know, there are questions that were brought up during the latest video on the Atari Box, and in this particular video right here, I want to go ahead and answer those questions, and hopefully I can answer them in a way that will address concerns that were raised at the time that we went ahead and retaped those videos. Okay, within the video, Gray Mouse once stated that it sounds like Atari is just making a set-top box, or what he meant top set box, right? After which the theme asked, well, what's the difference between that and every other console that's been out within the last generations? At the time, I couldn't go ahead and just express out, or, you know, laundry list out the things that are different. But I will say right now, the biggest difference is that with all of the other consoles, it was obvious that what they were depending on was their lineup of games that were going to be coming out to actually sell and support the console. Each and every console had its own must-own or killer app at launch or very close to launch. The Nintendo Switch, for example, it had Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Yeah, sure, it didn't have too much else, but that was pretty much the selling point of the console. Great, great game. You know, a few months removed now, the library is much bigger. It's definitely really supported. And people, if you didn't pick it up at launch, if you were looking for a Switch right now, you have multiple reasons to go out of your way and play it, okay? That doesn't hold true for just Nintendo. Well, let's go ahead and let's take a look at some of the other consoles that have been released out. For the PS4, at launch, some of the titles that it had were things like Killzone, Shadowfall, Knack, and other third-party titles like Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag, Battlefield 4, or Call of Duty Ghosts. You know, all of those AAA titles. These are games that, you know, people knew about and that they were expecting to be there at launch. And were also reasons, you know, that people decided to go ahead and pick up that console over XYZ console, the Xbox One or other consoles that were out at the time. Speaking of the Xbox One, when it first launched out, it had Dead Rising 3, Forza Motorsport 5, Killer Instinct, and the other AAA titles that I mentioned, like the ones that were there on the PS4, like Battlefield, Call of Duty, and other titles. You know, basically you had reasons to go ahead and pick the console up. There are things that you wanted to play, and that's what they were sold with. You know, same thing happened with the Wii U. Even though it sold abysmally, it wasn't very successful. But when it first launched, you had things on it like Super Mario Brothers U, Zombie U, Nintendo Land. Those things were exclusive to the Wii, and it also did have third-party support games. Going back, we don't even have to go that far back. PS3, it had things like Genji, Days of Blade, Resistance Fallen Man, Ridge Racer 7. On the Xbox 360, you had games like Call of Duty 2, Condemned Criminal Origins, Cameo Elements Power, Perfect Dark Zero, Project Gotham 3, and a whole bunch of other third-party games that came along with it back in 2005. The point being that I'm naming off all these games is that basically these games were ready for the system at launch, And these games were also in development years before the launch of each console, like maybe a full year or two before the console actually came out. With the Atari Box, we have no mentions of games at all that are going to launch with the console. Come here, you. Likewise, you know, we don't have anything that says that it's going to be there available at launch. And, you know, when they were saying about the prototype that they have in their newsletter, you know, people are just seeing that prototype now. And the situation is that they're hoping to have this released out in full in approximately 6 months, you know, sometime early 2018. And that's, of course, pending that they have a successful crowdfunding campaign. And they're going to use that crowdfunding campaign to even justify manufacturing a console. Okay. Now, if we go ahead and we take those factors into account, okay, I'm just going to make an educated guess here. All right. I'm going to guess that they haven't contracted any sort of third-party support for the console at all. Okay. So not only do we have no indication on what type of games it's going to run, but we also have no indication that Atari plans to support the console for a very long time. Because the thing is that when you contract third-party support for a console, for your platform, that's a long-term deal, okay? You know, if they do have those deals going on, I don't see, I don't, you know, there's been no indications that those even exist, all right? We don't know if they're planning on supporting the console for a long time, and if they are, if I was a third-party publisher, I don't know how they would go ahead and they would decide to support it. Because let's go ahead and take a look at another example, all right? A very current example, the Switch. The majority of the third-party publishers and developers took a wait-and-see position with the Switch. And, you know, that's even given Nintendo's long, profitable, and dependable place within the industry as a first-party publisher and console manufacturer ever since the early 80s. Now, if they were willing to go ahead and be cautious and have a wait-and-see attitude with Nintendo, does anybody really see any reason why any third-party publisher would be jumping at the opportunity to go ahead and make any games for the Atari Box at all? Given the fact that Atari hasn't been a presence within the console market in over 21 years, and the last time that they were, the console that they put out, you know, failed to sell 250,000 units worldwide, and, you know, and that these third-party publishers know, just like anybody else knows, because it's been publicly announced, that Atari themselves aren't willing to invest the money to manufacture the Atari Box without resorting to crowdfunding. Now, if you're a business person knowing all of those things, and you have an idea of the potential time investment, you know, and the cost of money it takes to go ahead and develop an actual game, whether it be an indie game or a AAA title, would you be ready to go ahead and risk investing, you know, all that time and money into developing for a platform that may never see the light of day? Another question that arose up through the video was that Grey Mouse asked, are there enough people interested in something like this, especially when there are emulators in existence? In my view, that really doesn't matter. Reason being is that the same can easily be said with the released NES and SNES classic systems that were put out. And those were popular and those were successful as hell. Because the thing is, why bother getting yourself an NES Classic or SNES Classic Edition when you could easily emulate all those games on a myriad of different devices, whether it be your phone, other consoles, your PC, Linux boxes, Macs, anything, all right? Those things are so easy to emulate for that, you know, you could pretty much run emulators on Toaster for a lot of those things. And, you know, my personal position is that whenever we talked about the NES Classic and the SNES Classic Edition, that I hate hearing, well, I could just get a Raspberry Pi. Why don't you just emulate? That's just a waste of time. Look, I hate that fucking position. You know, we shouldn't be taking that position with the Atari Box, all right? And I'm going to apologize for that, because that really runs counter to what we said before, all right? However, the one thing that we do have to go ahead and recognize about the NES Classic Edition and the SNES Classic Edition is that their allure is that they come preloaded with a crap load of really good classic games. In the case of the SNES Classic, that has the first official retail release of Star Fox 2. You know, and in both cases, they're really nifty, well-made products that come directly from Nintendo. You don't get that from a Flashback or the Genesis Mini, all right? Because Genesis Mini isn't made by Sega; it's made by AT Games. You know, it's one of those things where, look, if this is a quality product and it's put out and does what it's supposed to do well, then it has a purpose to be out on the market. I know that I can take pictures on my phone. All right, everybody has a phone. You know, it all has cameras in it. They've had cameras on them since like 1998 or, you know, the late 90s. But, you know, if I go out someplace and I know that I'm vacationing out and I'm going to be taking a lot of pictures, maybe taking some video, I have dedicated point and shoot cameras, digital cameras that I'm going to take with me. I have a dedicated digital camcorder that I'm going to take with me. The reason being is because those particular items do only one thing, and they do it really, really well. And it's a lot easier and a lot more dependable to go ahead and use those particular items than to sit there and wait for my, you know, ancient Samsung Galaxy S4 to go ahead, unlock, actually load into the fucking application, and then go ahead and have me take care of things. All right. You know, so yeah, is there a market for the Atari Box? Does anybody want this? Obviously, people are nostalgic for it, and that should qualify it alone. You know, that would be like somebody saying, you know, if Sega wants to go ahead and themselves, they want to bring out a first-party console and everything, is there a market for it? Who cares? All right? The way it should work is that if you have a product, and it's a good product, if you're able to go ahead and put it together and actually release it out, whether it's a game console, freaking even fidget spinners or whatnot, you know, if there's a market that can grab onto it and there are consumers who are going to go ahead and partake of those things, then your product is going to be successful, given it's a good product. With this right now, though, the Atari Box, I don't see any solid inklings that it's going to be a good product or that it's going to be even supported in the long term. You know, to that point, you have to ask yourself the question, okay, if Atari doesn't seem to have any third-party support laid out, if that really indicates that they don't seem to have any set long-term plans, what's the short-term plan that Atari does have? In that instance, I think what's happening is that Atari is hoping to make a killer profit off each and every box that they individually sell. I think this is really evident in the fact that they're touting an MSRP of, you know, $250 to $300 for each and every console, depending on the make, memory thing, and then yada 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 if it's got real wood finish and everything else. But you know, until we can actually get concrete specs about what is under the hood, the only thing that we could use to go ahead and speculate at the real cost of the Atari Box is we have to compare it with readily available devices that do similar things. And the closest thing that's to the Atari Box in size and everything else that is readily available to a lot of people and is very customizable, has a Linux front end and everything else, that given the time to go ahead and install everything as far as ROMs and apps and everything else, can do the social media thing, can do the web browsing thing, can do you know, media play, can play games and everything else, is a Raspberry Pi. I hate to go ahead and bring that up, but it's applicable here. All right? Because those are the only things that are available. That's the only device that you can use to go ahead and estimate a cost in comparison. Now, let's say underneath the wood paneling, we have something that's similar to Raspberry Pi, but it's got a custom GPU and CPU. That GPU and CPU, all right, that AMD-based GPU and CPU, it's not going to be comparable to a Ryzen processor or your latest R9 video card, AMD video card. Reason being is that those particular chips draw way too much power and create way too much heat to be in that small of a box, without any sort of active cooling. Especially we didn't see any sort of indication how much, what type of power supply is running or anything else like that. So if we're talking about a Raspberry Pi, or even a Raspberry Pi with souped-up specs, we could probably go ahead and justify a price point between $100 to $150. Now, I may be completely wrong, and like I said, I apologize if I am, but this is what I'm comparing it to. This is the reference that we're using. Like I said, Raspberry Pi, $60, 32 gigabyte card, $20 or less. You can get a 64 gigabyte card for around $30. All right, $30, $40. All right, right there, that's $100. Okay, then all it takes is the time to go ahead and download ROMs, watch a few YouTube videos to get the instructions on how to install all the applications and everything. That's, in a nutshell, what you're looking at with the Atari Box, going off of everything that they've shown us. Okay, now look, even at $150, they're still making a decent amount of profit off the box itself. Okay, many times you have first-party manufacturers like Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft. They're willing to go out of their way and actually take a loss on the box itself because they know they're going to make up the cost and the licensing fees for all the games and software that they are going to sell, or the applications that they service within the box itself. That's their focus. That's part of their long-term plan, is to have steady software support for whatever platform they're putting out. Because the thing is that, based off of the licensing that each and every developer and each and every publisher has to go ahead and pay them directly in order to publish an application or a game on their particular platform, based on that and the sheer number of copies or retail sales for each one, that's going to more than make up for any sort of loss they have with hardware. With that in mind, the fact that the Atari Box has an open OS is really troubling, and that should be something that a lot of people, when you hear it, you should be concerned about it. Okay, when a system is open OS, yes, it does make the console consumer friendly, because you can go out and you can install whatever you want on the box. You can customize it any way that you want. However, being an open OS doesn't bode well for the long-term survival of the console. Reason being is you could have any third party create game, any third party create applications. They could sell those games and they could sell those applications, and they're going to make money. However, because it's an open OS, they don't have to worry about paying any sort of licensing fees to Atari. Okay, they don't have to pay any royalties to Atari. Okay, Atari doesn't get their cut. So if you're a homebrew developer or you're a hacker, you're going to love the system. Okay, as you're going to be able to do anything that you please with it. Okay, make whatever apps and games you want. Go ahead and put it out. Even sell it. Okay, you're going to make money off of it if it does well. However, Atari isn't going to see a penny from any of those apps or any of those services or any of those games that are commercially sold. If Atari doesn't see a constant revenue stream being generated from that console past the initial point of sale, they're going to come to the conclusion that they're losing money supporting the console. And they're going to come to that conclusion very, very quickly. Given that in mind, what reason are they going to have to actually support the console long term? You know, the Jaguar came out in 1995. It left the market in 1996. It didn't break 250,000 sales. Most current consoles will break that within the first week in one sales region. All right, a lot of, I think the PS3 and the PS4 both sold that much in less than a day, just in Japan alone. So, yeah, when it comes to the fact that we don't see any obvious plans for games, there doesn't seem to be any indication that there's third-party support. They're charging an arm and a leg on the box, and they're insisting that there's an open, to give everybody an open operating system. I think what's happening, and on top of that, Atari is going crowdfunding on this through Indiegogo. There's really nothing at all that indicates that they have any sort of long-term plans to do anything else than make a quick buck off the initial sale of the box right then and there. They don't have any plans any past that, okay? In which case, guess what? If you're really going out of your way and you're trying to play Atari games, you can get away with any of the Atari classic compilations for any of the consoles that are out there. That's on Steam. That's on any of the platforms out there. You can go out of your way and you can get yourself an Atari flashback, and that's only going to cost you $60. And this is the reason, considering all of that stuff, all of those reasons and all of those details and all of those facts, like I said, these are facts. When I consider all of those facts and I consider where this is possibly going, it doesn't make me excited about the Atari Box. And again, I'd be really happy to see Atari re-enter the video game market and find some sort of success, okay? But when I take in all the factors based out of all the facts that Atari themselves have announced and have released out to everybody, I don't see anything that the Atari Box is going to do that my PC that I already have can't. Oh yeah, it has real wood paneling. That's the big difference. But at this point, thank you very much, YouTube, for following me all the way to the end here. What are your thoughts on this? I'd really like to know. You can go ahead and leave your comments below. Even if you want to go ahead and give me a thumbs down and just tell me you think I'm full of shit, that's fine too. At least at that point, I know you've watched the video. This is something that with the first video, I was torn on it. With the second video, I was mad. With the third video, I am just utterly disappointed at this point. But it's just one of those things that I got to go ahead and put it out there. Hopefully somebody will go ahead and take a look at it. Maybe be able to go ahead and think about it themselves, and maybe it'll adjust your view. But whatever you think, leave me a comment below. If you really like this video and you feel I'm worth it, go ahead and mash on that like button. And if you're new around here and you want to stick around, see me put out more videos like this, either by myself or with the other middle-aged guys, The Theme and Gray Mouse 1, I suggest you subscribe, turn on those notifications, because everything that's here, everything that we go ahead and we put together, this is all open discourse. It's the start of a conversation. And with every good conversation, it doesn't matter if you agree or disagree. If at any moment in time you stop and actually think and consider what I'm saying, then I know I've accomplished a lot more than you can ever imagine. Thanks a lot, YouTube, for watching this video. I'll see you later.